Hello and welcome to a humble Highland home. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Firstly, for everyone that has been caught up in the floods here in the UK and also for Storm Helene over in America, our thoughts are with you at this devastating time. We like to be prepared as much as we can for unexpected events, but some events you just can't prepare for. This is where the bond of local and wider communities can really come together to offer help and support, no matter how small. It can all make such a difference to an individual, a family, or an entire town, or even wider area. It has been quite humbling seeing such acts of heroism and kindness on various news outlets. My heart goes out to you all, and I really hope the weather subsides very quickly. For members of our own wee community here at a humble Highland home, you may have seen a post that I'd put up as Adam and I were travelling through Europe. Now, this was a well overdue trip that had been in the planning for a very long time, with the main focus of catching up with some very dear people over in Italy. And we worked it out that it had been 16 years since we'd seen each other, so it was a grand reunion and lots of new friendships made. Now, this was a driving adventure with Adam at the wheel the entire time. Driving abroad and on the opposite side of the road is not in my skill set at the moment. Throughout our trip, we experienced some pretty horrendous thunderstorms and down came the rain. But we'd also had messages from home to say that the weather at home was taking a turn for the worse and cold nights were being predicted that was earlier in the season than what it normally is. I've mentioned before that when we travel, we are lucky enough to have trusted people that stay here at the Croft to look after things. And of course, now they look after our kitty cats too. So they were able to take all the plants that I'd left outside, take them inside into the polytunnel and the greenhouse, just in case they would be at risk of the falling temperatures. I was so pleased and relieved to have all the plants inside the polytunnel and the greenhouse. But now it's time to get it all sorted out again. And one of the first things that most gardeners do when they get back from a trip is head over to the garden to see what's been happening. And of course, you start making a mental note of all the things that you need to do. So that was last night, making my plan. And today is a day in the kitchen garden as I catch up and get back on track as we start stepping into the autumn months. I enjoy all the seasons of the year for their own special reasons, but autumn is up there as one of the most beautiful as the leaves turn the brightest of oranges, golds and reds as Mother Nature prepares for winter. So as Mother Nature prepares for the winter ahead, it's time for me to do the same and to embrace the chaos that comes from pulling back all the frost-sensitive crops, harvesting and preserving the food, and then clearing the yellow leaves and trying to keep the growing spaces clear of weeds. There's always something quite sad about chopping up all the plants that I've lovingly nurtured from seed, where most have given back so much, but also knowing that these leaves and stems will be turned back into compost and feed the soil for next year. As food growers and gardeners, we're always planning for the seasons ahead, and autumn's no different. So before I went away on my travels, I'd prepared my autumn plantings, so hopefully they would be at the size when I got back, ready to plant out. So I better start by removing all the pea plants which take up the majority of the space in preparation for the plantings to be planted out in that space. We've had quite a few great pea crops this year. Now, I usually grow beans in amongst the peas too, but we decided to focus on growing more peas this year as we tend to eat more peas than beans, so it just made sense. I remember from last year that all the autumn plants that I planted in the garden were devoured by slugs. So I'm edging my bets this time by planting some outside, but also some in the polytunnel, just in case. As I start to clear and prepare the growing spaces for my autumn plants, I'm also thinking of the seed varieties suitable for winter so that I can nurture them as small plants and grow them on over winter to provide early crops in the hungry gap in the springtime. I don't tend to grow too many things over winter, as I look forward to preparing the garden and growing spaces for springtime. I like the winding down period, working with nature and the seasons, and looking forward to some rest and some slumber time in front of the fire. Does anybody else find random things in your pockets at the end of the day? I normally have labels or a pencil or even a wee rock. I am a big fan of having a wee rock in my pocket, but today I think I might be finding a few peas. And Baloo's come to join us just to make sure that I'm doing everything right. It was a relief to see that both Kebby and Baloo were both home when we got back from our trip. If anyone remembers, the last time we went away, Baloo decided to go walkabouts for 5 days, which created great concern for us. So hopefully they realise now that we will be coming back, and that it's fun to have other people here to sleep over, to play and cuddle with. It all looks very bare and quite untidy now that the peas have been taken down. But before I do anything else, I'm going to finish off harvesting what I can and get it into the kitchen before it spoils, and also so that I don't get a glut of vegetables all needing to be prepared at the same time, which can be overwhelming. These beetroot were planted before the peas were planted out, and this is why I left big spaces in between the pea plantings, so there was equal amount of light being able to get to the beetroot as well as the peas. The beetroot didn't grow as quick as I'd hoped, but this is one way of interplanting vegetables when you are space limited and you don't want any gaps in the soil. And in this growing zone, tucked away, sheltered on 3 sides, our growing season is very short, so we really have to make the most of every method that we can. This is a volunteer plant that popped up in the polytunnel. I added a string support for it to grow up, and I think it's a melon plant, but I'm not quite sure. So does anybody recognise it? These are some of my autumn babies just ready to get planted out. These are the ones that were brought in when the weather started to get really cold whilst I was away. I'm cutting down my tomato plants, as the tomatoes that are on there and the flowers, they won't have enough time now to grow and to ripen before the season's end. So I've had a really disappointing year this year for a couple of plants, and that includes my tomatoes and my cucumbers. So it's time to take them out and just put them down to lessons learned. And as always, there's always next year. The carrots continue to crop well, and I just keep thinning them out and leave the rest to grow on. I'm in no rush to pick all the carrots at the moment. I prefer to leave them in the ground and eat them from fresh. However, I have picked some of the thinnings and I use them either fresh in the kitchen, or I have preserved some. I've put some in the freezer. All but one of my courgette plants in the polytunnel have shown signs of cold on the leaves, and this plant, some of the fruits are starting to rot, so I'm going to harvest what I can and then take all the courgette plants out. Both the yellow and the green courgette plants have served me really well this year, but they do take up a lot of space. So I'll be glad to get this space cleared so that I can reclaim it, ready for next plantings. It's starting to look a little tidier, a little bit more organised, and I must remember to harvest the seeds from the plants that I've purposely left to go to seed for next year's planting, and also to add to my wee seed bank. I've mentioned before about the benefits of having your own weed seed bank, and it's probably a conversation that we'll have again. As well as pulling back the post-travels summer chaotic garden, we've also been able to harvest the last of the peas, some kohlrabi, carrots, yellow and green courgettes, a wee cucumber, some beetroot, and continued harvest of salad leaves and pea shoots. Not forgetting some kale and celery, which just keeps on giving. Before I head into the kitchen with all these yummy veggies to get them processed, I am going to make a start on cutting up some of this organic matter into the compost bin. I use a lasagna layering style to make my compost, so piling everything here will be chopped and added gradually rather than one big clump which would just turn to mush. I don't think it would even all fit in, even if it was chopped up. And I think we may need to rethink the size of our compost bins at some point, as we're making more compost as the garden gets bigger, and the more we will have to add to it, which is a great problem to have. But for now, I'm storing the end results in bags ready for added to the beds for overwinter. Thank you all so much for being with me here today. It's been lovely spending time with you all in my chaotic veggie garden. Take care of yourselves and others, and I'll see you in the next video.